All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast. Happy 2022. It's your host, Tommy Tahoe Alemo, episode 268. Let's get into it. We got a lot to catch up on. I took the last few weeks of the year to focus on a few things. One, closing out the year, sales-wise. We'll get into all that. Spending some time for the holidays. Had my sister's wedding on New Year's Eve, so got into a lot of stuff. So thanks for joining. This is the show where young salespeople come to build their sales careers. Got a solo episode today. We're going to talk about New Year's resolutions or a lack thereof. Let's talk for a minute about closing out 2021. Ended up closing, for me, the biggest deal that I got all year on December 30th or 29th, which sent me to President's Club. So it was a great send off. Obviously, it took the last few weeks of the year to not do any podcasts to kind of gear up and get ready for another great year of this show and bringing some new things to the table, both written and on the podcast and on YouTube. We're gonna have a stronger presence on YouTube here coming in 2022, as well as more writing. A lot of good stuff coming on the way. So stay tuned for that. Topic for today is New Year's resolutions, and I think a lot of people come in, close out a year, come into a new year with resolutions or with thoughts of things that they want to get better at or improve on or stop doing. And it's usually, the old joke is people that, go to the gym for the first 2 weeks of January and then don't go the last 50 weeks of the year, or they cut out sweets for 9 days and then give up, whatever it might be. We want to avoid that. If anything, what we want to do, we're really going to go in three systems. One, do a year-end review of how everything went last year. Number two, do a look ahead for each of the different buckets of your life, sales being one of them, your career being one of them, rather, and all the other ones. We'll talk about them all. And the third, what are some slight tweaks, ideally habits that you can change or tweak or build upon that are going to make a lasting change. It's not going to be something that burns you out in a couple weeks or in a couple months, but it's something that can really significantly change the course of your year and henceforth your life. So the first step that I do is I always do a year-end review. I do a few things. I look back on the year of the goals that I set, the ideas that I had going into the year. How did I do in the main buckets? So when I say buckets, I think everyone's got different ones, but for me, I've got 7, right? So there's the finances, there's business, there's my creativity, which is what we're doing here with this podcast. There's health, relationships, faith, and then learning/living. And so I know some people have, 2 or 3 or 4. It all depends on the verbiage you use and what matters to you. But doing a look back and giving yourself kind of a grade, more or less, of how did you do in some of those areas. I think everyone, if you're looking at it objectively, you probably have some areas where you knocked it out of the park. Maybe you were an A or an A plus or an A minus, and you probably have a few where you were a C or maybe a D or maybe even an F. And I think it's good to congratulate yourself on the things that you did well on, but it's really about awareness. It's really trying to get an understanding of every year is different. Some years you're making more money. Some years you're focusing more on family. Some years you're working on your health or your relationship with God or whatever it might be. And so every year is, I think, a lot different. And so trying to understand what did things look like in last year, kind of judging yourself on that, being aware of it, writing down some key moments. Another thing I like to do is look through all my pictures on my phone from the last year, because it's easy to look at the year and you kind of have recency bias of thinking, oh, everything that happened in the last month or two, that's the whole year. But you forget about that trip you took with your family in February, or you forget about that amazing hike in April, or when you got COVID in May and you're out down for the count, you kind of forgot about that, or whatever it might be. So I go through all the photos, write down some of my favorite memories and things that I did and events and habits I picked up and people I met and things like that, as well as the negatives, people that I spent too much time with, ideas that were holding me back, things like that. And so I think for me, I write that up in my notebook. Some people like to type this out. Some people like to talk it out. Some people just keep it in their head. So whatever works best for you, I definitely recommend at least writing it or typing it out, because there's a lot of connections that your brain makes when you actually put something on paper or on virtual paper, I guess. The second step now is trying to visualize and figure out, where do you want to be a year from now? And I'm definitely not here to coach you on all of the different aspects of life. I'm happy to share what I do, but specifically for your sales and for your career, the new year is definitely a time where you can reflect on those higher level goals. Do you want to have a new earning threshold, right? Do you want to break through to make six figures, or 150,000 or 300,000 or $1 million, wherever you are in your career? Do you have a spending goal or an earnings goal that you have? Maybe it's something related to a promotion internally at your company that you've been kind of elbowing for and setting yourself up for. Maybe I just saw on LinkedIn today, there's, dozens of people that I'm connected with landed a new job. So maybe there's a new job that you want to check out. Maybe it's at your company, maybe it's at a different company. Maybe you're not quite sure yet. Maybe it's a completely new career move. Maybe it's a side hustle that you want to launch, a podcast, a blog, a product, a course, whatever it may be. I think it's important to spend some time, reflect, think about, really like 1 to 3 things in each of the buckets that you care the most about, that if you were, sitting on New Year's Eve this coming year in 2022, that you'd be happy, that you'd be proud that you accomplished. If you didn't get anything else done except for this one thing or 2 things or 3 things, and that was it, you'd be more than pleased with that result. And I think you got to take some time to do that, to write that out. When you're thinking about just for your sales career, let's niche this down a little bit. You want to set targets that are a lot larger than whatever your company's telling you. Whatever your company tells you your quota is, for example, that is the reasonable amount that someone in your position should achieve to hit the earnings target that they give you, your on target earnings. So whether it's an amount of meetings you set as an SDR, amount of business you close as an AE, some other metric that you're held to as a sales manager or an enablement manager, my thought has always been to you roughly try to double that. And I almost never get that goal, but I always in the past have gone above 100% because I've shot for 200. So this past year I got like 150, and so yeah, I didn't hit the 200 goal, but I still kicked a lot of ass. And so if I only shot for 100, I was never going to hit that 150. So I do think whatever your company's given you, uh, related to the goal that you care most about, and hey, maybe they're giving you this huge sales target, and sales is just not the place that you want to focus right now for this year. Maybe you want to get a new job, or maybe you want to dive into enablement. Well, then you need to set a more audacious goal in that bucket, right? So you're following me? You want to set a goal for each of those buckets. And then the third thing that I think is probably the most overlooked, because it feels good psychologically to set goals. You're visualizing yourself, kicking ass and taking names and getting into all these different levels. The hard part is actually doing it, right? If all you had to do was write it on a piece of paper, everyone would be, billionaires with six packs. But that's not how the world works. The most important part now is trying to understand, how do we get from point Z, and we're here at point A, and how do we go to point B and C and D, etc. Right? So we know we have the end in mind. We know where we are today. We know what the gap is. Let's just use an example of, I made $100,000 this year, and let's say I want to bump that to 150,000, and so I need to get 150% of my goal, my sales quota goal, in order to hit that. We're using round numbers for the sake of this. Well, I'm not just going to get to 150 doing the same things I am today. I need to do one of two things. I either need to do a lot more of what I'm doing right now, higher quantity, or I need to do a better job of what I'm doing right now, higher quality. So I either need to, in the example of an AE, I either need to just, have more deals, have more opportunities, make more calls, send more emails, which I can do. I can work an extra hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever it might be, or I could have a higher conversion rate. So if I have the same amount of opportunities, maybe I need to close 5 out of 10 instead of 4 out of 10, or 6 out of 10 instead of 3 out of 10. Or I need to, convert a certain percentage of my cold calls into meetings that's higher than I have now. So I'm not making more calls. I'm just doing a better job. Ideally, you can do both, right? You could work a little bit harder and you could work a little bit smarter and more skilled. I think the more you work, often in your first few years, the skill develops and you're actually able to do more in less time as you develop that skill. So the best way that I know how to do it is to break it down into even a math equation, right? And know, um, get the Excel doc or get your calculator out and understand how many meetings is it going to take for me to get to an opportunity, and how many opportunities is it going to take me to get to a closed deal. How big is that closed deal, and how many deals do I need to close for the year? And by doing that, you can kind of break down the math to say, all right, if this is all the math, then in order to send the 50 emails that I need to book the certain amount of meetings that then lead to the opportunities and deals, I need to actually send 10 more emails. So I need to work 1 extra hour per day, let's just say. And you can back that into create habits. So once you have your math set, you can create a habit relatively easily. I like to do it in a 3-step process. So James Clear breaks this down in his book Atomic Habits. There's 3 R's, right? There's I'm forgetting the first R, but there's 3 steps. So there's the step that kind of like alerts you that a habit should happen. Then there's the actual habit itself, and then there's the reward for the habit. So if you're brushing your teeth, for me, the habit is I get out of bed, usually for my alarm clock, but I always get out of bed. Then I go to do the routine, which is to brush my teeth. And the reward for that is that, one, I've got a clean mouth, and two, I go get a cup of water and start drinking water because I'm thirsty in the morning. The same thing could happen if you need to build up a new habit of making an extra 10 calls, starting your side hustle, whatever it might be. You build that into, let's just say it's the beginning of your day at 8 o'clock. That's the first step. The second step is your new habit. So maybe that new habit is I'm going to spend 30 minutes writing content that I'm going to post on LinkedIn, or writing content for my blog, just as an example. And the third step is a reward. How are you going to reward yourself? It could be something as simple as taking a social media break, grabbing a cup of coffee, taking a walk, calling a friend, something that you find enjoyable. It doesn't have to be big. It can be as small as really is going to make a difference for you. And what that does is psychologically, it teaches your brain that the thing that I just did was worth it. The reason that I brush my teeth was not for the brushing of the teeth or because it removes plaque. It's because, Mom, my mouth feels good. And then I got a glass of water that I really wanted. So I've taught my brain that when I brush my teeth, it feels good, it makes me feel clean, and I get to have a water afterwards. The same thing with if you need to make that extra call or send that email or spend some time writing content or doing whatever you got to do, have something that cues it up, do the actual routine, and have a reward. Over time, that'll lock it into your brain, and it'll flow into your subconscious, that allows you to do it without even thinking about it. So um, all in all, what do I say? I think for some people, resolutions are great. I have a friend that's got one or two he was telling me about the other day, cutting things out. I'm not going to eat fried chicken this year, right? I'm not going to drink alcohol this year. I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes every day this year. For some people, that works really well. For others, it doesn't work as well. So I highly recommend doing what works best for you. If it's a resolution, do it, stick to it, write it, put it on your mirror. Otherwise, try doing a year-end review and try doing the long-term vision and setting up the habits that are going to help you get there. Again, I'd highly recommend checking out Atomic Habits by James Clear, one of the best 10 books I've probably ever read. And you'll get more tactical tips here on this podcast. You can definitely check me out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. I post every single day. My name is Tom Alemo on there. You're listening to the Millennial Sales Podcast on either Apple or Spotify or somewhere. YouTube, Tommy Tahoe. Subscribe, leave a review. It all helps while I'm trying to spread the love, spread the awareness, build knowledge, and we'll get after it. And we'll see you again next week for another episode. Peace.